Okay, as we get started, this is a fascinating subject in terms of the idea that patience is described in the Edgar Cayce readings as one of the three dimensions that we live in: time, space, and patience. I will let Steve go into the long explanation of what all that means, but it's fascinating to look at and to understand that patience is the greatest or best measurement of our level of soul development while we're in three dimensions. So you can sit there and say, oh, well, how much do they pray or meditate, or how great are their psychic abilities? None of that works according to the Edgar Cayce readings as consistently as saying the more patient you are, the greater your soul development here in the earth plane. I was talking with my wife Stephanie as far as trying to come up with a nice anecdote that would demonstrate patience, and we were both reminded of when we first moved to Arizona, and we moved in, we didn't know anything yet, so we got a 2-story house. You don't do that. And she was on this landing that overlooked this whole, great room area out into the kitchen. I happened to have been down below, and I was talking to her. By the way, here's a stupid thing I did. It was a great thing, but it seemed stupid at the time. The first day we wake up in Arizona, we have nothing unpacked, is that I said, let's go out and get a dog. And we did. We haven't even lived in the state 24 hours, and we go out and get a dog to be right in the room with us, and we move in. Anyway, this little dog, he's about 3 months old, and we named him Murray. And Murray is he's 3 months. I mean, what else do you have to say about that? And so he's curious about everything. He wants to help you do everything. And at that moment, I was putting together this nice little wall unit with glass shells and all that. And it has these little plastic covering grommets to be able to set the glass shells down on and make it nice and comfy there instead of clunk. Anyway, I have them all carefully wrapped up in this piece of tinfoil. And so I open up the tinfoil. There's nothing to set it on, so I put it on the ground. And I'm picking the things, grommets up, putting it on there, and Murray gets very interested in why I'm going down to this piece of tin foil. So I turn around and I see him. He has picked up a corner of the tin foil while I'm talking to Stephanie, and he's starting to drag it away in the other direction. I'm like, Murray, and I start to walk after him. Okay, and the faster I walk, the quicker Murray starts going, and then I start seeing the grommets go out into the shag carpet, just all over the place like that. And then finally, I just try to make a desperate grab for it, and Murray starts peeing as he goes. And I'm beside myself. Now, this is what happens when we approach things with a lack of patience. Because I wasn't seeing the situation as my wife was able to see it. Because up on the landing, and she's watching this whole thing unfold in front of her, and she is finding this to be one of the funniest things she's ever seen in her life. Now, I can just imagine God from on high in the 10,000-foot view that God has, looking down on all of the challenges that we have in our life, going, I don't care who you are, that's funny. So the idea is, if I would have had patience with the puppy, not been so, up in the air about trying to get this house put together because we didn't have anything unpacked, had the 10,000-foot view right there, I too, as I can now, understand exactly how funny that was instead of it being a stressful situation. So with all of that in mind, would you please welcome our favorite speaker, Steve Bonnet.
Hey, very interesting story there. It's amazing how dogs and pee are tied to spirituality. I mean, that's probably not the first thing you think of when you talk about spirituality, is the dogs doing their business, but there's a story there. So if we have time, I'll share that at the end, because it was quite an interesting one for me that had to do very similar to what John was saying, but no grommets were involved, nor was the shag carpet. Okay, these readings from the Edgar Cayce material are my interpretation of his chapter on the Search for God material on patience. And patience is something that we are here to learn. We all know it. Patience is one of the key reasons that we are here. Thus, we have plenty of folks who happen to have a unique tact of finding that last nerve in our bodies. So we're all here to learn patience. The Edgar Cayce readings are very interesting, and as they say, when you read them, there is not necessarily one meaning of what it is, what it means. It's what each individual takes away from it. So you can have 10 people in a room reading a single Edgar Cayce reading, you're going to get 10 different interpretations of it. It's what each individual takes away and what, more importantly, they do with it after the fact. Okay? So, patience is the lesson that each soul must learn in its sojourn through materiality. So we're here. We're going to learn patience. As John alluded to at the opening, Cayce defines patience as being having an element of time and space, as well as patience. That's our universe. That's our dimension that we live in. So let's start looking at time through man's eye initially, and then we'll get into the Cayce view of things, because the Cayce view of things is going to take it a little bit different. Okay? What is time? Well, it's a measurement system that we use, right? We use time every day, all day long. We base it on Earth's rotational patterns. We know that the Earth goes around and the sun goes around and everybody comes up. The sun comes up in the east and it sets in the west. And for as long as that's happening, life is pretty good, because if it changes, then we have issues. Very repeatable. And time is strictly of this dimension that we live in, our third dimension. Consequently, it is a very limiting element that we choose to apply in our lives here, okay? So, sometimes we know that each day can be divided into hours, minutes, and seconds, and fractions thereof. We have the work week. We have calendar weeks. We have months and seasons and years and decades and centuries. We have lunchtime and supper time and nap time and work time and play time, etc. We got all these times, all defined by man. Man is very, very in tune to what time it is. It means a lot to them. We live by time. Consequently, we are easily ruled by time. We start letting time rule our actions. It controls us as opposed to us taking control of it. This very, very regimental behavior comes from it. We become creatures of habits. I know as a child, my dad would get off work at 6. He'd get home about 6:10, sit down, have a beer, smoke a cigarette, and at 6:30 it was supper time. Supper's on the table. You want to eat, you better be front and center at 6:30. Otherwise, you're getting pork chops off the stove. But then we start looking about how we define it and how we use the term of it. And it's our routine. This is what we do. I must. I got to. It's time for me too. These are very egotistical type of statements, because we are predicating our actions on what time it is, and it's important for us to do it right now. And my first teacher that really got me going down this path back in the 80s was Dr. Sharifa Saw, and she was telling me once upon a time, I was over at her house and we were doing some study group work, and I made a comment. I said, "What time is it?" She goes, "Why do you care?" Oh, I do. I don't know what time it is. And she goes, "You are doing what you need to be doing right now. That's what time it is." And she goes, "We need to become less regimented. Time certainly has a place in our society, in our lives. But when it's a non-important issue, does time really matter?" You made a good point. And it was from that day on that I quit wearing a watch. I know, and that's what it is. What time is it? Well, and I also learned from that we become dependent on our material creations like clocks and watches and timepieces. But the inner clock is probably more powerful. Because I know that if I have to have my alarm set up to get up at 4 o'clock every morning, oftentimes it's at 3:30 and the eyeballs are wide open. Oop, must be time to get up and do something. I instinctively know what time it is. And I think a lot of us know this too, instinctively, but we become dependent by choice on what time we think it is. Okay? So this could easily become us in a lot of ways. We are running down the road based on time. We need to put into our consciousness up front, are we controlling time or is time controlling us? What's more important? And it's oftentimes that when we allow time, as we define it, to control our actions, our behavior, that we miss out on a lot of things. There's a story going around the internet once upon a time that I read. It had something to do with a person who died and went to heaven. And when this person hit the pearly gates, the guy that was taking charge of this person was giving the tour. And they went into this one room, and this room was full of Christmas presents. Unopened, beautifully wrapped Christmas presents. And the person remarked, "Wow, this is good. Whose are those for? Who are they for?" And the guy said, "Well, these were yours." "Mine?" He goes, "Yes. All of these presents were the opportunities that you didn't have time for when you were alive. Because we did not take the time to take care of what was important. We always felt compelled that we have to do this right now. It's the I, me, mine. The egotistical saying, well, you know what? This is it. We must do this right now. And in a lot of ways, we use time as an excuse to not do something. Ever get in the situation where you got somebody talking your ear off? "Gosh, I'd love to talk to you, Jim, but, I gotta go. It's time for me to go pick up my wife." Or some other make-believe story. But it's all become pattern-based limitations if we let it become pattern-based limitations. So we need to really give ourselves a conscious thought of how we view time. The second part is space. Well, what is space? That's another measurement system used by man. Man is going to measure something. He's going to measure fixed points. We're also knowing that space could be a three-dimensional spectrum where things happen, where things materialize. It's part of the whole. This building, this room that we're in is part of the building. This building is part of the campus, which is part of the lot, which is part of the city, which is part of the county, part of the state, part of the country, part of the world. Everything is part of the whole. There's a lesson there for us when we think about space as being part of the whole. But it comes down, again, to man's perception. How does man perceive what space is? Man is very, very controlling with his limiting thoughts that he's going to define what space is. It's very restrictive, and it has boundaries and consequences with it. Trespassers will be shot. No smoking. No parking. $500 fine for parking here. Get out of this space. So there's a cause and effect that we have with this. And what we know is that this, with these boundaries that man puts forth, comes with it an opportunity for us to be either patient or impatient. Thus, we have a test bed for ourselves to be tested. Are we going to be patient with these consequences or these boundaries? In a lot of ways, the boundaries are for our safety. They're good for us. But a lot of times, they're also limiting. And we need to learn to break out of our space. We have to let them be defined. And when we come in with patience, we start applying it, we are now under the scope of the cosmic scorecard. You have a situation. How did you handle it? For good or for bad? Spiritual growth, it's an opportunity. Somebody gets in your grill and starts talking to you nasty, you have an opportunity to react. That's the free will. That's the price that we pay for being in material existence. So it's always available to us. And if you really think about it, we have plenty of opportunities throughout the day to practice patience. It's a choice. We could be patient or we could be impatient. How do we handle the situation comes up to our internal mental maps and things of that nature. So we have examples of space. We have personal space. Everybody has their personal space. Leave me alone. We have a workspace. We have outer space. We look out here, we see the stars. It's outer space. If we were standing on the moon and looking down, the Earth would be in outer space. Okay? We have a parking space. Distance, if we look, area, volume. The space between the ears. Now that is a good one. Captain Kirk would always tell us on Star Trek that space was the final frontier. I beg to differ. Not that space, this space. That is the final frontier. Yes, that is where we go. That is what we must conquer. It is the space between the ears, not the stars and the planets, etc. We don't need to worry about Klingons. We must learn to control ourselves. Learning to control ourselves resides in the space between the ears. We have been given domain over the kingdoms of this earth. The animal kingdom, the vegetable kingdom, the mineral kingdom. We can train a pet. We can grow a plant. We can extract minerals from the intersections of the earth. We can do this all very successfully and very routinely and quite honestly without a lot of effort. However, we have issues when it comes to controlling ourselves. You know, people are always worried about UFOs and green people from Mars showing up here. I ain't worried about that. God ain't putting them there until we figure out how to get along with one another. All right? We got enough on our plate just talking about the folks in this room. All right? If we master this room, then we go outside and it gets interesting. You know? Because this is what it is. We have trouble controlling ourselves. We're too busy inflicting pain and misery upon one another to have to worry about little green men from other planets. So they're not there. They may be out there, and they're probably, as John said, laughing their butt off. But we have to conquer the space between the ears. And we ain't leaving here until we do. All right? Now, dude, you're in my personal space. Now, having a couple of these guys here, like Black Bart, I know that in about 5 seconds, Black Bart is going to tell Whitey here that he is intruding. He is going to have a lip lock around his right front paw in about 5 seconds. Because dachshunds have not necessarily a lot of humor when it comes to people in their space. I know, because I've got 2 of them. And you got about 5 seconds. So, Cayce's overview. This is now an overview. This is just, we're buzzing around in the jet looking down at what Cayce says about our patience. It's essentially around how we learn to possess ourselves in our actions, thoughts, words, and deeds towards our fellow man. This is how we possess our souls. We will talk about that in more detail shortly. It is also seeing God in others, despite their humanistic faults that we perceive of them. Okay? It's how we attain spiritual growth. It's the cosmic scorecard. Okay? It doesn't matter, as John said, whether you're meditating, going to church and hitting the confessional, going to communion, or whatever you're doing. That's nice, that's ritual. But if somebody comes up there and intrudes on your personal space, the question becomes, how are you going to deal with it? That's the key right there. somebody does something to you, you're going to go learn them? You're going to get back there, I'm going to make sure he understands it. Can't do that to me. So we have all these opportunities swirling about us. It's a check and balance system. Do you remember the presentation that we did on an ideal? How to take care of our spiritual and physical and mental bodies and use those in the right directions? Well, guess what patience is? Patience allows us at night to review the day, and then we can think critically about our actions. And were we really following through on our ideal? Were we patient? Did we handle every situation the best that we could? Or is there room for improvement? And it's a mechanism that enables us to better ourselves. Because we are all cracked eggs, we are all faulted. But we have to learn what it is that we're doing, and we have to have that uncomfortable conversation with ourselves. Because we have to admit our own imperfections. Balancing our ideal against patience is a wonderful way to do that. Okay? And then there's the old Cayce adage that y'all have heard 100 times about the mind being the builder. Okay? Well, guess what? Patience probably comes in to this equation. Think about how we lived life, right? How did we live life? Well, it kind of goes something like this. I can't wait for summer vacation. I can't wait to get into high school. I can't wait to get my driver's license. I can't wait to hit the bars. I can't wait to get out of school. I can't wait to get a job. I can't wait until I retire. And then Dr. Seuss shows up. Dr. Seuss shows up and tells us that how did it get so late so soon? It's night before it's afternoon. December is here before it's June. My goodness, how the time has flown. How did it get so late so soon? So are we building? We're always projecting in our minds. We want to hurry up and live, go live, so we can go do something that has to do with self-gratification in a lot of ways. So here we are, we're living the first 30, 40 years wide open, just barreling up the hill, right? Get up there around 40 or 50, we kind of throw it into neutral, kind of cruise. Come over the hill and start down. Start picking up speed as we go. Wailing on the brake button and hitting the brake. Nothing happening, going right to the floor. Here we go, talking to God again. Oh my God, right? What do? We all try to live ahead of time. We're always busy trying to go somewhere else because we wanted to get into school. We wanted to get a job. We wanted to go drive a car. Wanted to, do this. Then we want to retire. All right. You got to remember, we're all little marshmallow bunnies on the conveyor belt fixing to fall into a vat of chocolate or something they're similar to. And we just don't know where we are on the pecking order. But we're going that way. So maybe we take the time and we think about it. Kind of late now for this group. I mean, I'm snowing around here, but I mean, next time around, think about this the next time around, that we're going to be able to kind of maybe calm down a little bit here. But quite honestly, I mean, I know in my personal life, I lived life well into my 40s at one speed, and that was wide open. Wide open, man. I was motoring. I mean, that was just one extreme to the other. I'm lucky to be here. So, think about that. But isn't that what we do? We're always looking for anticipation. Well, I want to get there. I want to be able to do this. And then suddenly you wake up. Where the hell did they go? Oh, my God. All right. So, now, let's take it a little bit deeper. Let's start going into a little bit what Cayce was really talking about when he gave us some concepts regarding patience. He did in fact say that it is part of our dimension. It is a measurement tool for us that defines the quality of our spiritual awakening. How patient are we? So, we have the fundamental dimension, time, space, and patience, according to the Cayce readings. We talk man's view of time and space and somewhat of patience. But it's a fundamental of the human experience. It's the human experience. Consequently, because we live in what's called a three-dimensional world, our systems, we have systems of measurement that we use. If we think about a card game is two-dimensional. You've got numbers and you've got suits. Those are the two things that go on. That's how the game is measured. The human experience is three-dimensional. Have you ever heard the thing that things always happen in threes? Right? You see this movie star, somebody that dies, and then suddenly 3 days later, a couple more of these guys pop off. And it happens in threes. I see it all the time. Things happen in three. The scientists will tell you that our world, our dimension, comes up of solids, liquids, and vapors. An architect may describe our dimensions as length, width, and height. A historian may talk about past, present, and future. That's their dimensions they live in. The clergy may regard Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit as being the dimension. A spiritualist, mental, physical, and spiritual, body, mind, and soul. That's how we all define it. The dimensions are self-defining. What is your emphasis? What's your intent and purpose right now? That's going to dictate how you view dimensions. And it's a very fluid thing in our thoughts and our ways that we act. Okay? And Cayce was talking about it in the Spirit. And this is from one of his readings. It says, just as infinity in its expression to the finite mind is expressed in time, space, and patience. So when we talk about infinity, well, what's infinity? It's something that's ever going, no beginning and no end. Man's perception of it, according to Cayce, is that of time, space, patience. But spiritually, there is no time and there is no space. For they, like the Father, are one. So all of our dimensions potentially are like one. The Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit are all one. There is no time and there is no space. Remember, we were born in the image of the Father, which was Spirit. We, through poor behavior, got here. Okay? So, this gentleman, Dr. Everett Irion, was a longtime student, lecturer, etc. for the Edgar Cayce Foundation. Did a lot of books. He did a great book on the book of Revelation. And his view on this was somewhat interesting. He defined time as the measure of an understanding of an idea. Or, phrased differently, just the idea itself. It's an idea. That's time. Space is the measure of our understanding of a manifested idea or the application of an idea. We have an idea and then we did something about it. Time and space. Patience is the measure of our understanding of the purpose behind the manifested idea. What's involved in this? Why is this idea so important? And to what level of agreement with the idea do we have? That is the patient part of it. Now, if we were to take this and kind of dissect it, how about we describe an idea as an environment where plants and animals and minerals would cooperatively live and freely glorify their Maker? Wow, that's a wonderful idea. That's a wonderful idea. That's the idea. Hey, let's build this place. We could take and make it a manifested idea by creating a planet, let's call it Earth, and put it in a system where the environment and its inhabitants would thrive. They would do what they wanted to. They would glorify God. And then we come down to the patience and look at the level of agreement with the idea. This is where it gets interesting. We got to remember that as inhabitants of this planet, we willfully chose to be here. God did not put us here. We weren't supposed to be here. We invited ourselves to the party. Okay? So, because we are here, we must also now learn to adapt to the rules down here, to the laws. And we're not getting out of here until we can master and become proficient in those precepts. Namely, love and patience and putting others first. There's your time, your space, and your patience, according to the Cayce lines. God had an idea. He created the earth. We barged in. Okay. Laws of universal laws are existent. Universal law doesn't mean just here. It means everywhere. First universal law is love. First one's love. Second one's going to be having something to do with about reaping what you sow. Just saying. So if we were to take a three-dimensional concept and apply it to our spiritual development here on planet Earth, we could have our three-dimensional entities. You, me, and God. God, others, and ourselves. This is our three-dimensional, right? This is what makes our world go round. We are codependent upon one another, whether we choose to admit that or not. But if we take it down a notch and say, well, if this is three-dimension, what would two-dimension look like? It would kind of be right here. It's God and each of us individually. And it's at this stage here where it's important for us to know that what are we? Well, we need to know ourselves to be ourselves, yet one with the whole. We have free will to do little godlet type of things, but we need to remember that we are one of the whole. This guy over here can't be overruling this guy. It's his playground. We're just in it. We got to play nice with others. And if we take it down even further, we come down to one dimension. And essentially, that's all there is God. Because everything derives from God. Everything is part of God. God didn't import anything. Everything is God. That's all there is. Everything. Just God. We're part of Him. Each of us are part of Him. Just because we're each part of Him doesn't mean we're better than one another. It's our egotistical mind and thinking and our interactions with each other that test our patience that makes us think that's the trace, but it's not the case. It's not the case in any way, shape, or form. We are all beings of the one dimension. And we even find that in the Bible. Because in Revelation, we find, I am the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end, saith the Lord God, who is, and who was, and who is to become Almighty. Pretty cut and dry there for me. There is nothing but God. He is the beginning and He is the end. We are all part of that. The injunction then would be, know that all that materializes must first happen in spirit, and the law of cause and effect ever remains. Everything that happens must materialize in spirit first. The idea. Then it's the manifested idea. And then cause and effect starts coming in. What was the purpose behind that idea? What was the driving intent? Was it for the benefit of others or for the glorification of self? So everything that has happened, everything that has ever happened, always starts in spirit first. So just in this short presentation, and I do not know the full extent of universal laws, but love would be one, cause and effect, or reaping what you sow would be two. Because this is not just here in 3D land. It's universal. God's given us free will to do what we want. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. We have to reap what we sow. It's in the Bible a lot of times. So we have to be willing to do that. Whatever the other dimensions may or may not be, you will find those two laws present. So we always got to make sure we remember what we are doing. Okay? Now, each soul is body, mind, and spirit. These, as Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, are one. This is sexy body in front of you is one. Same as the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit is one. For the earth consciousness rarely conceives of that which may not be of three-dimensional nature. Now, one of the beauties and one of the things that I really like about doing these Edgar Cayce series is that invariably, during the research for these exciting PowerPoints, there comes a reading that pops up that is just, whoa, I like this. This is cool. I had this reading here, this 2771-1 for me. This was done for a 32-year-old Jewish lady, homemaker. And I have found a lot of things in here because I'm reading this. And I said, yeah, okay, I can use this. But this right here, the fourth and fifth dimensions may be spoken of. But as to their proofs, to most, even to this entity, at times, these are hazy. So this, I said, whoa, who is this person? 2771 had to be a cool person. So I go into the readings, print it out, got it right here, and I read it. I say, whoa, this is some cool stuff. Because this reading totally resonates with me about what they were talking about here. And some of these things that, it's applicable. If you read it, you may not get the same takeaways that I would. But let me just throw a couple of concepts out here. Paragraph 5. We would, as should be those tenets of each individual entity, minimize the faults of others as well as of self, magnifying the virtues. Sounds like patience to me. And then, this entity, however, as an Atlantean, that's cool. That always gets my attention because I think I've had some action down there myself. And it comes in there, it starts talking about the traits of the Atlanteans. And all of Atlanteans came from the planet Uranus. We're all Uranians. Anybody who was an Atlantean shipped out of Uranus. Okay, that was the planet that we all come from, according to the Cayce readings. And within that, there are these planetary astrological concepts that we all have within us. As every Uranian, as well as Atlantean, has the attitude of show me. Indicate to me the truth and benefits, then I may accept or I reserve the right to accept or reject. These people are all from Missouri, the show me state. This is the planetary Missouri, just where they're from. The Uranians and Atlanteans, this is what they're talking about. Show me. Give me the proof. And then I will decide if I want to believe it or not. And this is what they were talking about with the fourth and fifth dimensions. And that's what really just got my ears going, okay? And it talks about how some of the concepts of these people makes for the periods of extremes. Well, I can tell you some stories, man. What I've done. Extravagant with its principles, or managed to approach those things. Hence the entity, as each Uranian, as each Atlantean, is naturally a leader, a teacher, an interpreter for the many who are not gifted or turned, as may be expressed in the ways of reasoning to some. Well, what do? I always had this insight that I wanted to teach. I didn't want to teach the little germ factories, I wanted to teach adults. So what do? I teach adults. Coincidence? I think not. I don't believe in coincidence. But this was always something within me, always teach. I can't even tie my shoes for crying out. How long am I going to teach somebody anything? Lo and behold, the universe rearranged itself. Now I teach. I've been doing it for the last 9 days. Got 3 more to do too. So it was very interesting that this reading just totally resonates. There's just so much in there that jumped out at me and said, dude, this is you. Okay. But it's amazing. And this is why I really, really like doing these Edgar Cayce series. I really do, because I learned something. And John totally would love for you to do it too, because you know what? You might accidentally learn something. And we would love to sit out there and go, well, you just here. Diane. Okay. Patience and understanding. 2 entities here. Patience and understanding. It's the tongue and groove of our development. We got to understand and recognize that we're not going to know everything at once. It's going to take time for us to gain the knowledge and to transform it into something that becomes actionable for us. Consequently, understanding is gained through our both patience and impatience. My old man always used to ask me, well, did you learn anything, boy? Because I always invariably do something stupid. And he was, he's always like, did you learn something? Because I was impatient. And I can show you 2nd grade report cards. Stephen is always in a hurry. I swear I can still show you that. Some things, it takes me a long time to figure it out. But that's how we learn. This is how we learn. And what it comes down to is that we must learn to temper our responses to life's circumstances. Nothing says that life is going to be a bowl of cherries. Sometimes you bite a pit. Sometimes you break a tooth when you do. Doesn't mean that, life is always bad. So it's a challenge for us. It's like a dog who has to use the house for the bathroom. You're challenged to meet something at that time. Through patience does the understanding come. Knowledge of itself is nothing. In patience, that maketh for the glorifying. We have tendencies of being very, very impatient with things. This is one of the key processes that I try to relay to my students when I teach. And I'm saying, look, it's very simple. It's 6 steps. I can take it 1. Buy low, sell high works every time. But you are going to have to look at it. You're going to have to practice it. You're going to have to connect the dots for yourself. You see a lot of things, but you've got to remember, the financial markets are fluid. Something changes all the time. That's the learning part. And it's getting yourself and the horse situated correctly. I can't teach that. You have got to put that into perspective. That's what I'm telling these folks. And it's not only in my line of work, but it's also in our development. We have all of this information that we're putting in here, and we got to hurry up and get out of here because I'm tired of living on this earth. I want to go to the next step. I want to go to the 4th grade or wherever we're going next. Okay? But we have to understand that this requires patience. This is why we're not getting out of here. Even Jesus, 30 plus lifetimes running around down here before he got it. All right? What number are you on? Yeah, I can't count that high. So, this is Esther Wynn, 307. Esther Wynn was one of the chief compilers of the Search for God material. Her question she posed to the Cayce source is, how may I, through patience, gain the understanding? Source came back, says, it's in the application of that known day by day. The Spirit does not call on anyone to live that it does not already know and understand. Man's law will tell us that ignorance of the law is no excuse. Cosmic law seems, well, you don't know this, you're doing it, you get a pass. So it seems. Because if we don't know something, we don't understand it, then how can we be responsible for it? However, once we know something, then you're responsible for it. And this is what he's saying. You've got to apply it. Apply it day by day. There's not, we're not going to be challenged one time. We're not going to have a single event that's pass or fail. It's going to have again and again and again and again. And each time we're going to be tested to react to it. Because we're seeing this time and time and time again, the question may become in our minds, how much is enough? How many times do I got to see this? Right? And then we start becoming maybe impatient with the situation. So we're going to be tested. We are going to be tested frequently and often. But it takes us what we know. If we don't know something, then we can't really apply it because we just don't. So what it's saying is that practice makes more. The more we practice that which we know, then the more we are exposed to, the more we learn. But we got to do the work. We have to, on a daily basis, go in and practice and practice and practice this. A lot of times we become impatient. And we blame God. Hurry up. But it's something. We have got to be patient with ourselves. We often think that it's the other person we got to be patient with. Remember, 3 dimensions. God, self, and others. All 3 of those are opportunities and milestones for us to pass. We've got to master these guys. We've got to know something. It's when we become impatient that we open the door for further psychological drama. Because now we start pushing the envelope and we start doing things that may or may not be in our best interest. This drawing here is reproduced from a drawing that Dr. Mark Thurston put out. And the way this works is kind of like this. Right here is everything you know and have experienced right now. You are here. We go and we have interaction. We go out into the world, we interact somehow, some way, and we gain knowledge. Now, we are here. We go out, we have a situational challenge or something. We have more interaction. We learn something. We have new knowledge. Now we are here. This is the normal progress. This is how we go. However, sometimes when these situations come up to us, we try to force the issue. We use our free will and bypass the lesson to meet another situation without knowing full well how the game is played. So we are, in our haste, forcing the issue and giving ourselves an opportunity to really screw up. Because there's lessons in here that we need to know. And if we don't have them down and we try to take what we know into a bigger situation, then we're in trouble. Because we don't have all the facts, we don't have all the experience. We may not handle it as well as we could. And we got to recognize that. And this is where patience comes, because we may see all of these eyes on the prize with these challenges and situations and say, gee, I would like to be the one that does that. And you take what you know and say, well, I'm going to go do it right now. Knowing full well that there's some missing pieces. You know, it's called faking it until you make it. And it doesn't usually end well. Because this is where we are. It's a step. We got to take what we know. And then once the new challenge comes, then we will take that which we know and we'll be able to apply it. Armed with what we have, what we know. But if we go trying to do something, like put me in an airplane and say fly, we're going to have issues. I'll tell you that right now. Okay? Does that make sense, huh? Okay, this is a good place to stop and take a quick break. It's been an hour. We have another exciting hour left. We're about halfway. So we will be back in about 10 minutes and we'll put this puppy to bed.
I had an interesting experience again in talking with Stephanie, just knowing to, like come back after the break and kind of throw an anecdote in there about patience. And there's an interesting one in my life that came up. I won't go into all the detail behind it, but Stephanie and I got involved in producing a television show back then. It was in broadcast in the LA area. It was doing, quite well back then. And it was like American Bandstand, Soul Train, kind of a dance show with young adults on it. And we had major acts on it. I mean, people you would have heard, Will Smith, Paula Abdul, New Kids on the Block. I mean, we really did have some major talent that were performing on the show. And I was getting ready to, to get I actually had Dick Clark's attention to the point where he sent one of his representatives to look at our production process and be able, in fact, that was when Paula Abdul was performing that particular day, and sent one of his people out to be able to see what the entire setup was. Well, we didn't wind up being able to make a syndication deal happen. By the way, when you do syndication, you get uber wealthy. I mean, because if you go out there and let's say that you make $10,000 per episode, that's not that much money. $40,000 a month sounds like a lot to us, but then you have all the production costs. But what happens if you syndicate that to 200 radio or television stations across the United States and you get $40,000 a month from each one of them? I mean, that's where it goes, bam, immediately. You go into syndication, you make just amazing amounts of money.
Can we syndicate this?
Yeah, and we're syndicating these, yes. It didn't work out. And we actually had another opportunity in which we took the same concept and did it on Spanish television. And in the Spanish TV, I wound up saying, okay, Spanish TV is its own little market. I'm not going to be able to bust in there being I had blonde hair back then, not gray, and the blue eyes. And so I could tell that there were some blocks there, but KTLA, one of those super stations like WTBS or WGN, this is super station, KTLA out of Los Angeles, I had an appointment to be able to take a pilot of an English-speaking Spanish music program with a black male, Hispanic female host that was doing the program, at least the introductions in English, and all the acts were in Spanish, whether they were live or the recorded music for the dancing. Anyway, this thing was going to be a hit. I had the deal set up to go to KTLA. Literally the day before I go out there, I call to confirm. They say, it's a good thing you called. The gentleman you have a meeting with had passed away. Wow. Never was able to get this thing picked up again. Now, also at that time, some of you that have been in the study group have heard me talk about this Dr. Jonathan Ramos, who's a chiropractor, but very much a psychic, out of Ontario, California. And this was at the time when I was going to see him. And I finally said, I have had two major opportunities in my life to be able to become uber wealthy. I mean, it's not that I'm worried about prosperity in our lives and all that, but I said, just so close twice. And I mean, a guy dying, you start getting the message. You know, going, what is this about? And he stopped for a minute because he just tunes in and he is getting the answer. He goes, because you decided this was a lifetime in which you were going to find God. I'm like, this goes against everything I believe in prosperity. You can be prosperous and you can be a spiritual person. He goes, yes, you can when you're speaking generally, not you. You go out and get a couple of $100 million coming into you every year and you will not be spiritual anymore. Not that I wouldn't be an unspiritual person, not that I would become selfish, but I would become distracted. You following the difference there?
Yes.
You get distracted so that I wouldn't be standing here right now. I'd be making phone calls and setting up the next deal and doing all the rest of it, and really feeling like that was the most important thing in my life. Because once you do that, and I'll tell you, to the level of prosperity that we've had, I felt a tremendous amount of responsibility in being able to provide the livelihoods for so many people that work for me. And that, when you start to take it that way and you're going, that family, that, and you start counting them all, and you're going, those people are earning a living and living, moving, having their being within the time, space, and patience of John Schroeder being able to provide that job for them. I took it very seriously and didn't know how to keep it in balance. So for me, if I become uber wealthy, it's a problem for me. For other people, you can become as prosperous as you want. You'd be able to keep it in balance.
I want to be prosperous.
Sucks to have married me.
You should drive for Uber.
Yeah, uber wealthy now means driving an Uber cab. But in understanding that, I'll tell you, that brought a tremendous sense of peace to my soul when I heard that. And I'm going, boy, I'll tell you, if you have to have a reason why, for me as an individual, that I couldn't keep all that in balance, good for me for being able to make a decision that in this particular incarnation, I would just be comfortable and be able to say, all right, let's go ahead and focus on the things that I truly think are important. So in patience, I'm possessing my soul in that I don't have to go out there and have these big super things hit and have my life all fall apart. I'll tell you, I have a lot of friends who have been uber wealthy. It didn't work out for them. I mean, I may not be the only one with this affliction. I'm talking about people with, divorces, with kids in rehab, another one, you can talk about a karmic situation which he winds up getting in an accident and he's a paraplegic with a bad attitude for the rest of his life. And it's just, and the other one actually went to law school and can't hold a job. Everybody that he works for since he got out of law school, he says, I've never had a good boss. Well, you can see where those three fingers are pointing, when you go in a direction like that. So I'm not the only one with that challenge, and Steve will be able to continue on for us and tell us what patience is all about.
Patience with others is love. Patience with self is hope. Patience with God is faith. By Adele Barros. Very nice. I like that. It's a pretty nice little way of putting it. Ties up patience. There's our self, others, and God, our three dimensions, all applying patience using other ways of thinking about it. So, some of us may be challenged on our day-to-day life with some things in life. How about the way other people drive?
No.
Has anybody ever been challenged by that?
Not here.
Yeah.
The way other people drive. Now, one of the first lessons that I learned from my Cayce things is that everything is a reflection of you. And when I see this, now I have to tell you, I have made a concerted effort to be a lot more patient. And it's comical in a lot of ways, so long as I'm not getting run over. But when I start seeing people do these things around me, I stop and think, said, you know what? I've probably done that too. I was probably on the nut job end of that. It's true. Waiting rooms, right? Anybody go see a doctor? Get in a hurry, right? Computers, where's Bob Farrell? Computers, anybody challenged with computers? Al, you're talking about computers. Yeah. How about the airing of a different opinion? That seems to be an emotional hot button these days, isn't it?
Oh, yes.
We have become very, very intolerant of other people's opinions and our own precept and believing of the First Amendment. Customer service and tech support, how's that? That's always fun, right? Yes, you get to practice language skills. How about personal relationships? Personal relationships are testing grounds, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, back, some of you may remember Dr. Peter Shobe, and I sorely still miss this man. He was such a great friend and doctor. We'd always go in there and to go do get the adjustment, and he'd work, 10, 15 minutes, then we'd spend the next 30, 40 minutes talking Cayce stuff. And it was really cool because I really learned a lot about him. And I could still hear him. He goes, yeah, Steve, marriage is an exercise in patience, not only with your spouse, but with yourself as well. And he told me that several times, and calls, why am I hearing this several times? But it's with yourself. Anybody who's ever been married understands that, it's a partnership. And it's a good one isn't always one direction. It's got to have good interaction both ways. And you've got to also understand that, the other person has their rights too and their opinions, but maybe you need to be patient with yourself as well, because maybe they need some space and ground too. And it's really a fascinating thought when you start thinking about this. So, actions and inactions. When our expectations of God, others, and ourselves fail to materialize, our patience are tried. I know personally that I hold myself to very high standards on an academic level. Maybe I'm trying to make up for screwing off for so long. But when I was doing a lot of my prep work to get into college and stuff, I had to get back into the routine. And I know that I was trying to do these things and I was getting more and more frustrated. Because I know I can do this, but it just wasn't clicking. I was getting impatient with myself. It comes down to recognizing and remembering and living that the only things in life that we can control are our own thoughts, words, and deeds. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. Everything else is outside of our control. Consequently, we are in a reactionary state in a lot of times. And we're going to be surrounded by a lot of different people with different values, attitudes, and beliefs from our own. And in fact, it's becoming even more complex because those of us in here were around this world in 1966. The Earth's population has doubled in 50 years. There's now 3.5 billion more nut jobs running around. We have company. And they're all not sane like we are. Right? See how that line train of thought goes?
Yes.
Yeah. So what it comes down to, it becomes more and more imperative that we need to remember this. And my teacher always told me this. He goes, you don't have to love what the other person is doing, but you gotta love the person. And that's so true. And it's not an easy thing to do. It's hard. And this is where patience comes in. Because we have to recognize that we are all on different spiritual planes. Not everybody is as cool as we are. Right? Yeah. And they may be different than us. And they see things differently. Doesn't mean that they're wrong. We might be wrong. We don't know. But we got to be open to that idea. So we still got to remember that, you know what? Yeah, it may not have been a really cool thing to do, but we should still be trying to see the God in them. Think 9/11. How easy is that to do? When you got several people hijack airplanes and crash them into buildings and kill 3,000 people. Kind of hard to sit there and look for the God in that, isn't there? On a material basis. But this is what we've got to do, is that, okay, we have to have a patient and understanding deal. We don't have to like what they did. We don't have to agree with it. They had an idea, they materialized it. Now we exercise patience by applying our understanding of that idea. And quite honestly, it affected a lot of people. I don't mean the families involved and the people who are responding. Think about the National Pulse. Cayce's World Affairs readings talks about nations as entities propelled by its people. There was a lot of negativity out there post 9/11. Still to this day, there is. And it's hard to deal with this, but it's imperative that we do. We have to overcome our own personal biases of our view of the situation and look at the actor and not the act. And it's so hard for us to really get through that. And it's a challenge for us. Ms. Edmonds asked, when we reach the development of ceasing to see faults in those we contact, then we are at the beginning of patience. We begin to ceasing to see faults in others, then we are at the beginning of patience. Makes you wonder what else is down the line. But this is what the beginning is when we start looking at everybody and saying, you are just like me. We are all down here trying to reestablish our relationship with God. We all have a different path. There's no one path. There's no one path. We have a lot of different ways to get there. We all have different lessons to learn. We have got to commingle and cohabitate and cooperate with each other. It is no mistake that the first lesson in the Search for God series is cooperation. Because we got to recognize that. The second one's know thyself, and the third one's what's my ideal. Okay, all these things start coming together, but we've got to start ceasing to see the faults in them. Napoleon Hill wrote a book in 1925, and actually he was commissioned by Andrew Carnegie to do it, and it came out to be his Think and Grow Rich book. And what it was, his commission from Carnegie was Carnegie wanted to know what makes rich people rich. And so Napoleon Hill went out and he researched it. And essentially what he came on was that it was a couple of things. And one was that birds of a feather flock together, where people who are successful will work with, and other people who are successful, they will share ideas, they will cooperate. But the other one that he said was that he recognized that every hardship that we have in life, every problem that comes along, every failure that we experience has in itself a seed of a greater benefit. Phrased differently, he promotes turning a negative into a positive. We're going to get hit with a lot of crap in life. How we deal with it is a total choice on our part. We can be impatient, we can be self-serving about it, or we can take it and say, you know what? Yeah, that sucks, but I learned something. I can now make a benefit out of this. And it doesn't mean that all your problems are going to go away. It's a matter of adapting your mindset. Henry Ford said, whether a man believes he can or a man believes he cannot, he will be right. Cayce said the mind is a builder. 3 exact same statements. One that may control self and anger is the first lessons. Control self and anger. Disregard the word said, yet able to love the soul, the one that causes or produces such a state or feeling. You know, people are going to say things that just rub you the wrong way. A lot of times we don't know the intent behind it. Maybe they just said it. Maybe it was an off-cuff comment. Maybe you were just having one of those days where it doesn't matter what anybody said, it was going to rub you the wrong way. And it's okay to get angry. It's okay to get angry. It's human nature. But we don't have to sin as a consequence of our anger. We can control ourselves. Control self and anger. One of the first lessons are laws. The final frontier. The space between ears. Control thyself. 295. The lovely and talented Miss Mildred Davis, previously known as Mary Magdalene, according to the Cayce readings. She asked what was the master's, or what is the master's definition of patience. And he said, know that ye in patience possess ye your souls. In interpreting then how one possesses your souls, that in the loss of patience, there is the entering, as he gave, of those influences that would separate the real self, the soul, from the maker. Hence, in patience, you possess your soul. You are in control. That's what Jesus said. That's what Jesus said. It's okay to get angry, but don't sin. You have to remain in control. When you lose control, the other person has control of you. Think about that. When you fly off to him, they can sitting there waiting on the hot button mode. Ooh, ooh, watch this, watch this, boop. Right? Yeah. That's what happens, right? That's what happens. And what Jesus is saying, it's allowing the entering of those influences. We are 12 people in this room, but we ain't alone. This room is jam-packed, full of other things that we cannot see. And what it is, it comes down to this right here. Are you a good witch or are you a bad witch? And you've got them right here on each shoulder. And then every day, every second of every day, you've got Glenda saying you should do this, and you've got Broomhild over here saying you should do this. The question becomes, you want to go play with the monkeys or you want to go down the yellow brick road? That's a choice. That's a choice. These are the influences. Where do you think thoughts come from? Do you ever have these things, these impulsive thoughts that just come in and say, I want to knock the hell out of that guy? Where did that come from? Right? Smile and walk away. Every second, every minute of every day, this is what's going on. The Wizard of Oz is a really cool show. Rated 39 by Frank Baum. Really cool. Because it's kind of like life. Dorothy had stuff going on. She had issues. Right? But she had help. She had Toto. Right? That's important. You know, Toto gets out of the hair and then she's got issues. Over here, what happens? We have these negative influences. This is going to cause us to do things that may or may not be in our best interest. We've got to look on the other side and recognize it for what it is. Recognize you are being prompted, you're being tested. Whatever situation you have to deal with in our material world, recognize that it is a test for you. You are having an opportunity You get to show off. I get to practice my patience. And it's hard to do because a lot of times we become emotionally involved with this. But it's so important to recognize and keep up here at the first thoughts, right at the first part of the being that, you know what? I got to be patient with this person. It takes work. It takes work. And then we got to practice that. And then you practice it like riding a bicycle. First few times wasn't so good. But eventually you kept practicing and then you got it. And then you run around without hands. Look, Mom, no hands. Right? You're proficient. This is how life is. You've got to learn to turn off the negative and look for the positive. Follow the yellow brick road. That's what it's all about. Okay? We gotta deflect those influences, and they're all out there. They are out there. Cayce readings always talk about this. Just because you can't see them don't mean they're not there. They're there. You're being challenged with them. You also have good things. You know, you should do this. You get the urge that, you know, I'm going to go do this because I see something. I see a person on the street corner. It's hot. Here, have a water. Why'd you do that? Oh. Linda, I was telling you to get after it. You do it. These are the influences that we have all the time. Now we come down to the source, the types of patience that Cayce says is out there. We didn't define patience as patience. It is what it is. We just have patience. But Cayce tells us that there is active patience and there is passive patience. We ought to know the two. We've got to know how to use them. Then we would define for the entity what we mean by the entity having patience in an active, positive manner and not merely as a passive thing. This means just don't stand there taking it. It means apply what you know. Apply this. Turn these influences into something that is positive. That's something that's really going on. And we really need to work at this because it's hard. We're not very, very good at it, which is why at the beginning it says we're here to learn patience. Okay. Patience is not as a passive thing, but patience is necessary in the experience of each soul, rather as a positive, active thing within the application of sane. Twice, positive and active, big letters, which means emphasis. We've got to have a positive way of looking at our patience. Maybe that comes into looking at somebody who's rattling your cake and smiling at them and saying, you know, I understand what you're saying. Maybe it's trying to reason with them, as opposed to just saying, you know, hey, whatever, and walking away and disregarding them. Taking or enduring hardships or censure or idiosyncrasies of others is not necessarily patience at all. You don't have to take it. It's not patience. That is not patience. This does not mean becoming goody good. No, far from it. Be able to look every man in the face and tell him to go to hell. But live as he did, the lowly Nazarene. What that means is that you don't have to take what people are throwing out at you. You have your opinions, you have your viewpoints. Why can't you go out there and put forth the active thing? Remember, it's all about putting forth love. Take this negativity that you're being bombarded with, find it off and turn it around. Kill them with kindness. That'll aggravate them more than anything. But that's what he's talking about. You don't have to take all this stuff. And you know, you need to stand up for yourself. You need to be able to stand up for you. Nobody's going to fight your battles for you. Cayce's saying, don't let them mop the floor with you. Stand up. Stand up. Put your big boy pants on. You know? Get with it. It's okay to get mad with these people, but you know, just don't go sinning with them, okay? That's the advice. Passive patience, to be sure, has its place. You know, there's times you got to zip it. But consider patience rather from the precepts of God's relationship to man. Love unbounded is patience. If somebody's sitting there just spewing hate at you, remember, the act or the actor, what's more important? Love manifested is patience. Endurance at times is patience. Consistence ever is patience. Now, when he's talking about active and passive, think about this. Let's say you had a kid, and the kid's rather unruly, and he's always giving you grief. Passive patience would be to let him do or her do whatever it is they want to do, believing that somewhere down the line they'll see the light, somebody will come along and straighten them out. That's passive patience. Active patience is taking more of an approach with the individual and trying to put the love back to them. Kill them with kindness. Show them that you care what love is. I remember my dad, you know, my old man. I mean, he would, God, I'm lucky to be here. That's all I can tell you. I mean, because there was some stuff, you know, I really pushed the envelope a lot. But he was always there. I mean, there was times he got in my grill, rightfully so. But he would also give me the latitude to make my own mistakes. But he would be there guiding me. You know, when things are going, he would ask and talk about what was happening and said, you know, maybe you think about doing something like this. I mean, you know, as opposed to, why are you running around drinking beer, smoking dope, and riding your motorcycle on one wheel? You know, that ain't going to work. Like, people used to call my mother up and say, do you know what your son's doing? And, you know, I live in a small town, so, I mean, you know, God, you know, then let the beatings begin. But he was very, very patient with me. He let me make my own mistakes. But he would try to point me in the same direction. And when I wouldn't listen, because at 17, I knew everything, then he would ask me, did you learn anything more? He used to say that to all the kids. It drive my sister nuts. But that's how he was. He was really cool about it. He was really cool about it. He was a guiding force. He was being actively patient. He was making suggestions, recommending, but yet not being confrontational with me, letting me make my own mistakes. Knowing that, okay, this is what I think you should do. You should look at it this way. He was being active with it, as opposed to, what in the hell's wrong with you? You know, there never was any of those conversations. At least I don't remember.
Shut him out.
I remember a few of them you know, my mother, I mean, you know, the scariest moment of my life when I come home with a buzz on, 11:30, and she's sitting there at the kitchen table smoking a cigarette. I said, oh shit, I'm in for it now. Sit down. Oh God, here we go. Again, active patience. She didn't get in my face, didn't beat me over the head or anything. But she was sitting there giving me the love. I didn't appreciate it at the time. You know. 40 years later, oh yeah, I get it, you know. And it's just like all the crap the old man told you at your 17 that you didn't hear till you're 43. You know, oh yeah, now I've got pretty smart. You know, patience with yourself. So, oftentimes, we may feel that I don't have any more patience, I'm done. You got on the last nerve and I am done. Question is what really has happened when they think this? Cayce responded and said, they have lost patience with themselves. It isn't the other person. We like to put the blame on everybody else or everything else, but the truth of the matter is the problem will be staring back at you from the mirror. Okay? You go point the finger, and as John said, there's 3 more pointing back at you. They have lost patience with themselves. We have made a conscious choice not to be patient, is what has happened. We have quit trying to be patient. Can't do that. We're being tested. We're being tested. You've got to continue pressing forward. And then there's this old adage about patience being a virtue. Well, we come to know God through living a virtuous life and gaining a deeper understanding of His lawful loving ways. That's what we're here for. That's what we're trying to do. Okay. Patience is a virtue. When does patience cease to be a virtue? When thou art satisfied with thy own surroundings or conditions. When you are satisfied. Very big word here. I'm satisfied with what I got. I am good. I don't need anything else. I'll just right there. Leave it alone. I quit right now. I'm satisfied. Wrong answer according to Mr. Cayce. Content but satisfied. Content in that, have thy way, Lord. Use me as a channel. Not my will, but thine be done. That is content. Satisfied means gratified. And it is the beginning of the falling away for self to be glorified. Self-gratification. I am satisfied. I don't want to be content. I want to be satisfied. I don't want to be content with one helping. I want 3 more. I want to be satisfied. We're opening the door for egotistical activity. When we think in terms of trying to be satisfied and gratified, we are putting the emphasis on self. And if you think of the Lord's Prayer, give us our daily bread. It doesn't say gorge us with our daily bread. It just says give us our daily bread so we can get by. It's when we start putting more and more emphasis on being satisfied. The I, me, my. And when we start putting in the I, me, my, then what happens is that we start putting behind other people, other people's issues and concerns, etc., and we gradually bring our own self to the forefront. Because now it's starting to become all about me. I'm special, just ask me. Where patience is not necessary, should one find themselves thinking that they don't need to be patient anymore, they are no longer the sons of light. I don't need to be patient. My lot in life is such that I have got it made. I don't need to be patient with you and your silly little problems. I have all the money I need. I have all the material things that I need. He with the most toys who dies wins. I'm going to win. We start thinking in this mentality where we don't have to be patient with other people. And Cayce says we are no longer sons of the light. Because where is that emphasis now? It certainly isn't on the other person. It's all on me. It's all about me. I, me, my. He is that without those crosses has ceased to be of notice and is no longer among the sons. When we have opportunities where we are challenged to be patient, we are physically bearing a cross, mentally bearing a cross, spiritually bearing a cross. When we get into the mindset that we don't have to, it doesn't matter anymore, I don't have to be patient because I'm somebody special, you have issues at that point. Because now it's all about you, and as Cayce says, you are no longer among the sons. As he would put in the life readings, the entity has lost. He's gained and he has lost. You start adopting this mindset where you don't feel you need to be patient for whatever reason, wrong answer. Wrong answer. Always, 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 we've got to think about being patient. It is one of the key things that we are down here to learn. And we are being given plenty of opportunities to do it. We have got to choose to do it. It is in our best interest. Because in knowledge and power comes the responsibility to do it. We saw earlier where Cayce stated that if you don't know something, then you're probably not going to be held account for it. If you don't know or understand it, then how can you do it? You really don't know. This tells us that once it is presented to you and you have the knowledge and you know that you should do it, tag you're in. Now you got to. Now you have got to do it. Throughout the Search for God readings, and as well as a lot of the other readings, there is always this one statement that the Cayce source would make that would just resonate with me. And it was this. Now that you've got this knowledge, what are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with it? Expectations have been set. You have been given it for a reason. What are you going to do with it? And then, in another reading, it goes on to state that he who gets this knowledge and chooses not to use it is worse than an infidel. So the expectations are pretty high on that cosmic scorecard. So we got to really think about this. And it really helps us to make sure we know that we need to be patient. We got to make a conscious effort to do that. And it ain't easy. Because there's just people out there that just rattle our cage left and right. But you know what? That's okay. We got to deal with it. They have their rights too. Chances are you rattle somebody else's cage and you don't know it either. Huh? So we got to always be thinking about this. But, and when we see these things, we're always told that the more spiritual we become, the more we're going to be tested. We're going to have more tests. And a lot of people think that means in the material sense. In the material sense. Well, life's going to be burdensome, or, I'm going to have an accident, health issues, job, or something like that. That may very well come to bear too. But it's also in the mental. It's also in the mental, and it goes right back to what I just said about what are you going to do with this information. I can't get that thought out of my head. Because it's very easy for me to go slide off and twist off and do something else. But what are you going to do with this information? I have got responsibility to do something with it. And it's just something that I always think of. It's a mental thing. It's a challenge for me because I know that I've got to do this. And I have placed those bits and bytes right in the front of my doing.
Hurry, Steve.
Time and space are taking effect.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's go ahead and hit that real quick. And then, understand that this is what it's all about right there. We've got opportunities everywhere, okay? And it may not always be obvious to us that we have this opportunity. It may not always be a wrap up the side of the head saying, hey, guess what? Opportunity here. It may be very subtle. It may be dog urine. I told you that I have an issue, and I'll talk about this. I'm going to shut this down real quick. We're going to hit this. This presentation, God willing and creek don't rise, is going to be on our website. So if you want to see it again, in about a week or so, maybe, go to edgarcayce.org and then select videos, and you'll be able to watch this again, in case you get bored. Can't sleep at night. So, story about the dog. I got 2 dachshunds. One has had 2 back surgeries. Consequently, he kind of walks a little bit funny there, but he's lost feeling and doesn't have good control of his bowels or his bladder. I mean, this guy, you talk about being able to chew gum and walk at the same time. This guy can go 1, 2, and walk at the same time. He's pretty talented. The other one, Annabelle, I've had for 13 years. Annabelle's relatively old. She's getting up in her age. Annabelle, in the morning, gets up, beats feet out the doggy door, does her business, and comes back in. And then she goes full retard. Then the house becomes a deal. So one day, I come home, and there's Peel. So I get to town, I'm down there talking to the dog. Annabelle, damn it, what the hell wrong with you? You know better than this, right? And then it hit. Then his little voice pops off into between. He goes, now you know what God feels like when you continue to do the same thing that you always do. What do you say to that? There is no comeback. Patience. This is happening for a reason. There's a lesson to be learned here. And I mean, it was just such a, a statement. Wow. So Annabelle, I take a different approach. I understand, I'm trying to practice. And so it's weird. I mean, it hits you in the weirdest ways at the weirdest times. And earlier, dog pee, there's a spiritual opportunity. You don't always think of it in that terms, but guess what? The Lord works in strange ways. Thank you very much.
Thank you. John.